Hey guys, how you doing? Derby here, and this is my version of the Garuda Extreme Mode Primal Fight. This guide is specifically catered towards Melee DPS jobs like the Dragoon and the Monk, but it's also a guide that everyone can use. So let's get started. The first thing you'll notice is that the tank is tanking Garuda just above the two northern pillars, whilst the rest of the party, excluding the melee jobs, are stacked in the centre of the arena. This is to ensure two things. 1. Everyone is already prepared and in position for the next phase of the fight, and 2, so Garuda's AoE feather attack does not destroy any of the pillars. At 90%, Garuda will summon the Gales, and as you can see we're already prepared for this phase. She will then jump up into the air and get ready to cast her Minstrel Shriek attack. To avoid this attack, everyone must hide behind the pillars, making sure they're nice and snug in between the rock and the purple Gales. After she's cast this attack, the tank must instantly run back into position and get her dead center again. Razor plumes, as well as one Saturn plume, will now spawn. We have the off tank and 2 DPS take out the Saturn plume as fast as possible, whilst the other 2 DPS AoE nuke the razor plumes. Once the Saturn plume is dead, kill the remaining razor plumes before they explode, then get back onto Garuda. After getting her down to about 75%, she will summon 2 adds, Soprano and Shirada. We're now on to the next phase of the fight. Should you not DPS Garuda down in time, she will instead disappear and cast another Minstrel Shriek. This time however, she will be on the eastern side, casting towards the west. Then she will summon another set of plumes. Should you lose more than 5 rocks during these phases, you're pretty much guaranteed to wipe the fight, unless you have a tank limit break at your disposal. You need a total of 8 rocks remaining at the end of this and the next phase. Back onto Soprano and Shirada. Soprano has a red line, which grants her and the Garuda an ability called Wicked Will. This ability can instantly one-shot any non-tank who takes this hit, like a Melee DPS for example. This attack is completely avoidable. The tanks, carefully planning their damage mitigation cooldowns, should be able to survive these attacks. Initially, Shirada has no line, but does gain one eventually. Once Shirada gains her going line, both Soprano and Garuda are granted with a massive damage reduction buff. The only way to reduce this buff is by decreasing the distance between both Shirada and Soprano. As this is a Melee DPS running guide, we pulled Soprano to the south. Both tanks must make sure that they are right against the edges of the arena to ensure that there is maximum distance between both Shirada and Soprano, so you can deal maximum DPS. All of the ranged players must now stack up against the western side of the wall. This is to make sure that they are all completely out of the way, avoiding any front conal abilities from Shirada later on, and to also make sure that all of the AoEs are stacked on the side. It is also easier for the healers to monitor both tanks, should the situation arise that one of the tanks need critical healing. So the off tank will now pull Soprano to the south. Everyone must now nuke Soprano as fast as possible to make sure that they can beat the Tornado AoE. This is a strict DPS check. Soprano will also use Wicked Will here. As I said previously, this attack is completely avoidable. You will notice 2 things before both Garuda and Soprano cast Wicked Will. They cast it simultaneously. Firstly, a party member should have a blue orb near them. Should the player have this orb, they must call it out to the rest of the party so they know when it's coming. Secondly, there is a set rotation before Wicked Will happens. Both Soprano and Garuda will first cast Friction. After Friction, both sisters will use Downburst. The Melee DPS must now run all the way behind the pillars. Wicked Will come right after Downburst. It has a massive AoE range. If you mistime your run as a Melee DPS, you'll get hit by Wicked Will. This is an extremely unforgiving ability, hence why we down Soprano as fast as possible. It also makes it so both tanks only take 1 Wicked Will each. Should you instead have the off tank take Shirada first, the main tank will have to deal with 2 Wicked Wills, which could be seriously dangerous to the party. Healers must make sure that both tanks are topped up to full health at all times to make sure they do not die from extremely hard hits. Once Soprano is down, Garuda will no longer use Wicked Will. The off tank will now provoke Shirada and pull her to the south. Again, the party must nuke her as fast as possible to make sure you beat the Tornado AoE. Once Shirada is dead, go back and DPS Garuda. The faster you kill the twin sisters, the more time you will have to land some damage on Garuda. If your DPS is low, this fight can literally go on for hours, as the next 2 phases will now constantly rotate indefinitely. You will continue to DPS Garuda until she jumps up into the air. At At this point, it does not matter wherever the party stands. However, it is advised to group up so everyone is topped up to full HP for the next phase of the fight, no matter how little damage you will take here. After she's used her AoE nuke, Garuda will now go back into Gale phase. This time, there are no rocks for the razor plumes to attack, so now they will target the players. In this phase, however, there will be a spiky plume. We had everyone gather around the western side of the Gale, whilst the off tank is on the east. The main tank will grab Garuda and this spiky plume. The party will kill the razor plumes, not the spiky plume, as humanly fast as possible, then deal as much damage as you can to Garuda. The spiky plume, on the other hand, will attack the main tank and make him generate a stacking debuff. Once the main tank has 3 stacking debuffs, the spiky plume will explode. You do not want this to happen at all, as you will need it for the tornado right after this phase. So instead, once the main tank has 2 stacks, the off tank will provoke and pull this plume away to the east. He will damage the plume down to around about 25%, then unsheath his weapon. This is to make sure that the spiky plume does not die from his auto attacks. You can press Z on your keyboard to unsheath your weapon. The second Garuda jumps up into the air, the party will kill the spiky plume. Once the spiky plume is dead, he will leave an AoE marker and explode for AoE damage. The second the AoE marker disappears, everyone must run into the impact. The remnants of his AoE will leave a protective bubble. This bubble will shield the party from Garuda's AoE tornado. This is why you must make sure the plume lives all throughout this phase of the fight. We are now in what I call the Vortex phase. Garuda will now spawn her twin sisters, Soprano and Shirada again. The Spiny plume will also spawn. We let the Spiny plume attack a random player. The main tank will grab both Garuda and Shirada and take her to the northern spot just behind the giant rock, exactly like before. The off tank will take Soprano again and run back south. It is important that neither tank use provoke, as you will need it for the Spiny plume. Also, just like before, the party will run around to the western side. This time, however, 5 vortexes will appear in an X shape. These vortexes are static and do not move. The trick in this phase for the Melee DPS is to deal as much damage as you can in time before the vortexes spawn. Just before the vortexes will appear, you'll run into the area where the rest of the party is. This is because it is impossible for the Melee DPS to avoid Wicked Wind with its massive AoE range whilst inside the southern triangle. The Melee DPS will stick with the rest of the party and wait for Soprano to use her Wicked Wind. The second you see Wicked Wind, you will either use Spine Shatter Drive as a Dragoon or Shoulder Tackle as a Monk. A Dragoon may also use this time to make use of his useless Piercing Talon ability. Either way, make sure Soprano is getting killed. Again, the healers must ensure that they're topping up the tanks to full health. The western players must also make sure they're avoiding the AoE frictions, as well as Garuda's feather attack. Now, in this phase of the fight, there are 2 situations that could occur. If the Spiny plume lands on the main tank, he will call when he has 2 stacks, and the off tank will provoke the Spiny plume off him. We will instead kill Shirada exactly where she is, on the main tank. As a monk, you can reuse Shoulder Tackle to reach Garuda, as it has a 30-second cooldown. As a Dragoon, it is best to use Piercing Talon here, as you will need Dragonfire Dive for the next rotation of the Gales. If the Spiny plume, however, targets the off tank, the DPS jobs or the healers will wait for us to get 2 stack debuffs, call it out when we have it, then let the main tank provoke the Spiny plume to himself. The off tank will then provoke Shirada to the south and we will kill her there, then go back to Garuda. Once both Shirada and Soprano are down, you will deal as much damage as you can to Garuda before she jumps. Just like the previous phase, as soon as he jumps, you will kill the Spiny plume, run into the bubble as soon as the AoE marker disappears, top everybody up to full health, and then wait for the AoE tornado to occur. So once this is over, you're now back at the beginning of Gale phase. So again, the main tank will take the Spiny plume, the off tank stays east, whilst the rest of the party go west. Kill the razor plumes, DPS Garuda, the off tank will take the Spiny plume when the main tank is at 2 stacks. Kill the plume, and when Garuda jumps, go into the AoE. And now you're back at the beginning of Vortex stage again. The fight continues to go on and on like this until you eventually kill her. I'm not too sure whether Garuda has a hard enrage, as I've never seen it before, but please try to keep up with the DPS as much as possible, because you quite simply do not want to be going through both of these phases over and over again. There's one ability I've forgotten to mention. This is Feather Rain. Feather Rain is an AoE that Garuda uses each time she jumps up into the air. She will throw random AoEs around her. You must avoid this AoE at all costs. If you get hit by these AoEs, you will get hit for around 2k damage and she will put a wind-based dot on you. This ability is extremely dangerous. The easiest way to avoid this ability is to simply keep running away from the area where Garuda jumped. And that's the fight pretty much summed up as much as I can. I'll let you guys enjoy the rest of the video and allow yourselves to watch as I die right at the end of the kill, which is rather typical for a scrubby Dragoon like myself. So thank you for watching this guide, and I'll see you all later.